Hey y'all, welcome back to Millennial Thermom. Today I'm excited for us to have a conversation with Colleen Ashford, who is a bilingual speech language pathologist who works primarily with toddlers. And I just as a disclaimer, I know that those first years of parenthood, it can be so easy to start Googling everything. And I'm here to say, don't Google that. Let's just talk to Colleen. So maybe she can share some insight specifically on communication milestones. Um, all of that kind of self-talk around when your toddler isn't talking, what kind of stories could you be telling yourself? And then we're going to try to throw in a little bit of the importance of bilingualism and continuing that cultural connection for our families. So take it away, Colleen. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity. I work in home with families who receive regional center early start services. And so when I start seeing toddlers, it's because they've already been referred and we know that there is some delay in their development. And so when I'm talking to parents about how their child is doing, sometimes I'm giving them information about what milestones we hope to see by a certain age. So I want to give some of that information
Yes.
to you all today. What's important to note is that milestones do not equal averages. So a
Mm.
milestone is what 50, or I mean, is what 90% of children can do at any one age. So almost all the children can do it at that age, whereas a average is what 50% of the children can do at any one age. So for example, a milestone for a 1 year old, a baby who's 12 months, is that they say at least their first word. But the average is that by about 12 months, they're saying about 4 to 5 words. A number of words is something really salient that people really grab onto, and that's part of expressive language, but I do want to talk about receptive language too. That's
Okay.
important.
Yes.
Um, by 18 months, the milestone is that a child have at least 10 words, but the average is that they have 50 or more words. Then by 24 months, the milestone is 50 words, and the average is about 300.
Wow.
Yeah, so everything jumps really quickly. And then the next two jumps are even bigger. So for 30 months, when a child's 2.5, which is when I start seeing a lot of these kids, the milestone is 100 words, but on average, kids have about 300, 400 words. And you think that's a lot, but I do want to let parents know animal sounds count as words.
Mm.
Exclamations like, wow, yay, uh-oh, those all count as words too. And if you're raising a bilinguito, if they say leche and they say milk, it's 2 words. So
I
you
like
are
that.
counting the words in both languages. And when you start counting, a lot of times they do have more than you'd think because those numbers really sound big. But
Mhm.
when you start counting, you're like, oh, okay, they have a little bit more than I thought. It will be time to refer to early intervention or talk to your pediatrician about getting a speech language evaluation if your child's not meeting that milestone. So I don't want parents to be as concerned about that average, but more so at that 18-month mark, if they don't have at least 10 words, at that 24-month mark, they don't have at least 50 words. Those are big times when parents start to refer for early intervention.
Okay, so that's good to know. So I'm just gonna process this a little bit
Yeah, it's a lot.
as a toddler mom myself, right? So I do notice that my toddler does say like, uh-oh, vaca, which is our dog, like all these words, right? But if there was a part of me that felt like she wasn't speaking enough or speaking clearly enough, then I might go to Google and my Google might say average, the average 17-month-old
Mm-hmm.
says this many words. I
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't stress out as much if my daughter is not saying those many words. I should be more focused on the milestones, which tends to be less than the average, it kind of sounds like.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Because 90% of kids have hit at least that number.
Oh,
So
okay.
at 18 months, 90% of kids have at least 10 words.
Okay.
Um, 50% is just one data point, right? And
Yeah.
average is really truly a range.
Yeah.
And so in order to fully understand that range, it's good to get an evaluation with a speech pathologist if you're concerned. But yeah, focus more on the milestones and also don't focus just on word count. I'm going to give you some other milestones to look out for that are just as important as how many words they have. So at 12 months, baby should be starting to like do little gestures, like they should wave back to you a little bit when you wave to them. When you imitate like doing a kiss or something like that, or trying to do peekaboo, they should be engaged, looking at your face, giggling, smiling, starting to imitate some of those things and maybe some of those sounds that you're making, especially if you're just babbling back and forth, like going ba 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 ba, and they're like ba 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 back.
Yeah, me and my daughter, we beatbox. I go,
That's awesome.
and she does it back. So I'm gonna say that's a
So she's
milestone.
got joint attention, she's got imitation. Those are really those foundational building blocks for learning more language. And then receptively, a lot of times parents are not as concerned about this area, and this is an area of strength for their kids. They're like, I know they understand everything, right? So at 18 months, they should understand when you're like, hey, where are your shoes? And understand, oh, I should go look around for my shoes. Or be able to follow a direction like, hey, please get that ball over there, get that, and then be able to go get what you talked about. When they get to 2 years old, then we want them to do two-step directions, like, hey, get that ball and give it to your sister, please.
Okay.
So the receptive language is just as important as the expressive language, but sometimes because of numbers, right? And especially in American society, we get focused on numbers and we start just being like, it's all about counting how many words. There are so many other foundational skills, like, are they parallel playing with a peer? And are they initiating play with you or bringing something to you when they need help rather than, crying or being upset without that self-advocacy. So those are great skills that you need to be looking out for as well, and giving your kids some credit.
Yeah, I love that. And I think one thing I'm trying to acknowledge as a Thera mom, that the relationship and how we connect, our attunement, our connection is just as important as how much does she know her ABCs or not at a certain age, right? Because those are the skills, that secure attachment, that are really going to help us and her long term deal with the teenage hormones later down the road, right? Like, do we have a relationship, or am I able to be present enough with you to notice that, oh, you are really attentive and attuned. Like, one example that I have is that my husband loves basketball, and for the longest, like, they still do. They'll play little basketball. And now whenever he comes home from work, she like occasionally will be like, ball, 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 and go try to bring the ball to Papa because she knows he loves the ball. And for me, I'm like, oh, that's really cool, because she knows she's picking up on interest, and she's like also connecting and learning about her parents just as we're learning about her.
Absolutely.
And I'm like, this is what I want to care about more than what's her SAT scores, right? Which I feel like in the future, which a lot of parents fall into that trap. Like, I just want them to succeed and I want them to be well, but that doesn't necessarily mean they need to be perfect in the top 1%. And there's
I'm
no
so
such
glad you
thing.
said that. And I want to acknowledge that parents are also getting so many of these messages from social media and ads for stuff that feeling like, oh, they don't have the right toy to teach them. And parents are getting advertised a lot of academic type toys, like teaching them the letters way too young. And the science shows their brains aren't developmentally ready to be learning letters at age 2 and 3. Now, maybe if your child has a strong special interest that like it's really you're following their lead into that's okay. But they should be more working on like building a tower, knocking it down with you, playing basketball, those joint attachment and engagement play activities. There will be a time for learning letters later. And that's not to say that, all academic stuff is not recommended, but sharing books together and looking at the pictures or singing songs together and then have them hearing the rhyme, that's actually going to develop more phonological awareness and early literacy skills than quizzing on letters.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. We don't need that.
And it's so funny because my daughter likes the ABCs, but she likes the song, right? She likes it when I sing her the song. And I'm like not really worried about her being able to spell at 1.5, right? But I think it's just so funny that she'll point towards where the letters are right before bedtime because she wants me to sing her that song, right? And I think for me, it's really a good reminder, like, okay, this just singing and flowing with this song and remixing
and you're
it.
following her lead
Fun.
and her interests. And that what I would say is one of our biggest strategies for parents whose children are late talkers is start to follow their lead and tune in
Mm,
with them of what they're interested in and start to just talk about that. And,
yeah.
you may feel like, the narrator of March of the Penguins, but like, and you feel sometimes as a parent of a child who's a late talker of like, they're not saying much back. So you're like, do I keep going? Because it's kind of strange to have a one-sided conversation. So those are the strategies we teach and learn in speech therapy, and narrate the play, talk about what's going on with them, rather than asking lots of questions and quizzing. What's that? What's that? What's that?
Oh, okay, I see. So
Because
modeling,
it gives them
kind
a
of?
lot of pressure. Yeah.
Yes,
Modeling for sure. That's a great
gotcha.
word for it. Yes.
Okay, okay. I like
And
that.
sometimes these strategies, I think can place a little bit of that dreaded mom guilt when we're
Mm,
teaching like, oh, okay, well, we're going to narrate. We're going to just talk about what they're doing, talk to them more. I think sometimes the message moms receive is like, oh, well, was that the problem? Like they're delayed because I just didn't talk to them enough.
um,
And that's not it.
yeah.
Most kids are going to learn language by picking up what people are saying around them in the environment. Yes, doing things one-on-one with your child is great and it's important, but just because the strategy is talking more doesn't mean you didn't talk to them enough.
I love that.
You're it is usually more of a nature than a nurture thing when it comes to language delays. Often, the families I work with have a family history of late talkers or other children in their family who have a learning disability or are autistic. And so it's more like this is who that child is and this is how you can support them, not that it was your fault, mama.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I think it's such a good reminder because we do live in a society where there is a lot of pressure and expectations and weight placed on usually like one primary caregiver if another one is
Yeah.
working, and it usually ends up being like on mom. So there is like this weird pressure, and I like that reminder. And I try to tell myself this when my toddler acts like a toddler. I just want to like, she's being a toddler. It's not
That was
anything.
developmentally appropriate.
Yeah, it's not anything that I'm doing wrong or right. Like, you know what I mean? It's like she's just being a toddler right now. She doesn't, this texture was weird. So now she's all antsy, but that doesn't mean that I did a bad job at whatever I gave her, right? It's just like
Mm-hmm.
she's just a toddler. And like you said, their development is so unique. And sometimes these averages and these products and these numbers will try to convince us that we need more. We need to be doing more, being more. And I think the messaging is like, you're enough as you are. You're enough of what you're doing. And it's such a good,
You're
gentle
enough,
reminder.
and also that it's okay to ask for help when you
Yes.
need it.
Yes.
All states have an early start program that your pediatrician can refer you to,
Oh,
and most of the time it will be free, especially
okay.
at least the evaluation part to get
Okay.
evaluated in your home. And I am so honored to be a part of people's villages. And a lot of
Yeah.
the times it's only for a short time in their child's life, but we know that intervening early will help them later
Yeah.
on. We always say that wait and see approach is not recommended. So know that
Hmm.
you are enough, but also that none of us were meant to do this alone.
Yeah.
We were
Yeah.
always meant to mother and parent and community.
Yes, 100%. Is there a certain age that you would say, like, let's say somebody's worried about their toddler not communicating with words? Maybe there's
Mm-hmm.
other forms, but with words that you would say, okay, this is a good time to seek additional support?
Yeah, I would definitely start with that. I think a lot of times people wait till 2, but I would say at that 18 months if they don't have 10 words
Oh,
or they're not responding when you call their name, they're not pointing out pictures in a little book when you're like, "Whoa, where's the apple?" and finding it. That's
okay.
a good time to
Okay.
talk to your doctor about a referral. But you can also refer your own kid in most
Mm.
states as well, because
Oh,
sometimes doctors do go, oh, they just need more time. But if you know in your mom gut that they need a little extra support, you can refer to early
okay.
intervention
And then I
yourself.
know we're like wrapping up the last minute or so, but what are
Yep.
some best ways to contact you? And like if somebody came to you and they say we need more support, where would you direct them to get that additional support besides a doctor?
Yeah. Your state early start program.
I'll just
I specifically work with families in North County and San Diego. And I'll put my vendor number for the San Diego Regional Center in the comments, as well as a couple links to resources
okay,
on
perfect.
Milestones. But Can also be found at ashfordspeechandadvocacy.com, or I am theadvocate.slp on Instagram.
Awesome. Awesome.
Can I leave with one more bit of wisdom for our
Yes.
bilingual mamas out there? Because
Yes, yes.
sometimes they have a little bit more guilt placed on them and a little bit more uncertainty when they're like, their child may have a delay. And a big question I get asked is it because we spoke two languages to them? Are they delayed because of that? Are they confused? And I just want to assure those mamas the answer is no. There are more bilingual people in this world than there are monolingual people. Just maybe not always in the United States, but kids can develop two languages at once, and delays exist in bilingual families and in monolingual families. And maintaining that connection to your culture through speaking your cultural, your heritage language is important. So you can get that help, but also maintain the bilingualism if that's important to you.
I love that. Yeah. Thank you for reminding me on that topic, because right before we were recording, I was sharing, like, I think my native language is Spanglish.
Yeah.
And we speak a lot of Spanglish in my house. And yeah, it's such a beautiful connection back to like how I was raised and like my roots, but also hers. And you're right. I think we can push past the one language is better than the other narrative that sometimes we hear. Like, no, I have the privilege of speaking two languages, and it's a beautiful extra muscle that we have, right? So that's
Absolutely
beautiful. I appreciate that. I will be tagging your information and all of the resources that you mentioned. I will put them in the description. And thank you so much. And I hope that you all go follow and go reach out, and also give yourselves a lot of self-compassion in these first couple of years and beyond of parenthood. So y'all take care.
Thank you, Joanna. Bye.